Guys, I cannot begin to tell you how excited I am to be able to share this episode. It was such an honor to even have such a beautiful conversation with one of my absolute inspirations. I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button so that we can continue to create more amazing episodes and bring on more amazing guests. Let's get down to business. All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode. We have someone who is very special to me, definitely an inspiration. I've only mentioned her name a handful of times. She's a motivational speaker, an educator, co-founder and coach at Flex Method, and a bodybuilding world champion. She has 18 years experience in the fitness industry, and her passion lies in helping people in recognizing their own potential and helping them recognize that they are the most powerful person in their life. Transformation starts from within, which is why she is incredibly passionate about mindset and psychology. Hattie Boydle, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I'm honestly so grateful to be here. When you reached out and asked to be on, I'm like, it's always such a compliment. Like it's always such an honor to ever be invited into someone else's space. And I do appreciate the kind words that you just shared. I had no idea that I was an inspiration to you. And I can definitely say likewise, Zoe. I absolutely love the work that you do. I watch, I listen, I learn.
Thank you.
And I just really love anyone, I'm very drawn and turned on by women that use their voices, and they use their brains. And, you are that for me, and you are leading, a wonderful community of men and women. Like men can also be inspired by women, but I know that you work a lot with women. And I think that's such a beautiful thing, because we do have this, sistership, whatever we want to call it, this sisterhood, that I think that is so important and integral for even just the growth and safety of the female community as a whole. So leadership is a very heavy load to carry, mostly because it means that we have to do the work before we take others down the path.
Exactly.
And so I salute anyone who is willing to put themselves out there. So of course, it's an absolute honor to be here with you.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm blushing. I can't. And our frequent listeners will know just how incredibly grateful I am to have you here. And thank you so much for saying those kind words as well. Now, tell for those who are unaware of exactly who Hattie Boydle is. I would love to know your story and a little bit of a background on who you are and your self-discovery journey, where that began, and also where you feel you're at with your journey now.
Big question. Big question.
Always.
Layers. So I guess as I reflect back on my life, I've been an athlete my whole life. I started gymnastics when I was 4 years old. I was an elite level gymnast by the age of 12. I was invited to be a part of the 2016 Commonwealth Games. I was doing a lot of training from a young age, and I really, owe so much of, I guess, the qualities that I exercise these days towards my training and my nutrition, to that little girl who really was put into a very intense kind of way of being. But I learned so much from that. Like I really learned the art of practice, the art of skill development, the love for skill acquisition. I think that's why I'm so passionate about strength training, separate from weight training, because it's such a skill, as we know. Like when we're trying to lift 2.5 or 2 kilos at 2 times our body weight on our back, 4 reps, you can't just go on there, under there and think about something. You have to be so present. And I often call training meditation in motion. 1 rep at a time, 15 times or whatever it is. And so there is so much purpose and intention into training. So I've really, I've been an athlete my whole life. I've done more training in my life than anything else itself. My partner's younger than me, and I laughed and I said, for the whole time that you've been alive, I've spent that much time training, because I was elite for the first 9 years, and then I've been weight training for 18 years. And I don't think I share that enough. I think we see people as we are now and we think, oh, they're just like that. But it's like, no, everyone's had their own transformation. And I've had my own transformation. I definitely wasn't I definitely didn't have the relationship I have myself now, 15, no longer, 18 years ago.
Mm.
Part of my story is, unfortunately, I suffered anorexia in my childhood, my teenage years.
Mhm.
And I'm so grateful for that time, Zoe, because in the same way that I learned so many amazing skills from the little girl who was an athlete, I learned
Mm.
so much about myself through that little girl who was suffering with anorexia. And really, I was just trying to control things.
Yeah.
But it really taught me how powerful my mindset is, which is why I'm fiercely passionate about mindset, but also the relationship we have with ourselves, the psychology of the language that we use, why we
Mm.
do what we do, the intention behind it, because the intention drives our experience over everything,
Mm.
you know. And so it's important as we embark on any career, any journey, any transformation, that we have a really clear understanding of why. And
Mm.
I know that when I was in hospital, I looked around, I thought, oh my God, I have to do something about this. Like, I have to change. I have to change so I can change the world.
Mm.
Easier said than done. A lot of relapsing,
Yeah.
a lot of lessons.
Mm.
But it really took me down the path into becoming a personal trainer, because there was just no way that I ever thought in my life, yeah, I want to be a PT. When I was in high
Mm.
school, I was obsessed with fashion. I was obsessed with models, and I thought I was going to do something in fashion. I am so unfashionable, Zoe. I don't know what I was thinking then. That was
I
such
think
an
you're
illusion.
fashionable.
It has not changed since I was 12 years old. I swear I've dressed like Gwen Stefani my whole life. When is it going
That's
to
hey,
change?
that's back in now. That's back in. Mm.
But it led me into personal training. It led me into helping
Mm.
others. And then, of course, that evolved and that transitioned. And another really big pinnacle area of my life was when I was introduced to strength training. And it really took this focus of how I looked, which was what I was very still focused on, especially when I first started
Mm.
competing. And it was like, hold on, the bar doesn't give a shit about what you look like. It
Yeah.
just cares about what you live today. And I felt so empowered by that. And then that led me into, well, how do I support the performance of this with my nutrition? And again, I started to
Mm.
look at nutrition as like, all right, this is my fuel. This is my fuel to build my body to outperform myself. And then again, these two things that I probably still had some awkward relationship with, or maybe I would say even in some areas unhealthy, still rigid,
Mm.
still restrictive, still lots of rules. It broke the rules for me. It changed the game, right? And the rules of the
Mm.
game changed. And ultimately, so did my life. And that's where I just really fell in love with an athlete's mindset, where it was like performance driven, recovery driven, fuel driven. And
Mm.
I looked at my body and I thought, fuck me, I can do anything with this. I can do
Yeah.
anything with this. And it's like, it was even now, like, of course I get frustrated with my body. I'm a human being like everyone else. I'm like, want it to be, stronger or, bigger
Mm.
bum right now. It's like every morning I
Yeah.
look at it, I'm like, are you going to do? Like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
But but there's
Mm.
also like, okay, what's my responsibility in that? And how do I want to show up for myself each day?
Mm.
Knowing that it's not going to be perfect, but just trying to do a little bit better. So if I reflect back on my relationship, 18 years ago to where I am now,
Mhm.
it's like same body, different person. But
Yeah.
I had to have that breakdown to create the
Mm.
breakthrough that I have now. I don't think I would have the same relationship that I have with myself and my body now if I didn't go down that path. I don't think I'd
Mm.
recognize how powerful my mindset was
Mhm.
if I didn't go, oh my God, you literally nearly killed yourself. If you
Mm.
focus that same intent or like that same energy and like focus into something powerful, well, then I could probably
Mm.
create something powerful. And that's what I look at my body. I'm like, you are in such an incredible vessel that
Mm.
if I look after it, then I can do something pretty amazing. And I always write, like, you can still love the body you have now while working on the body that you want it to build into. In fact, you must love it, because punishment
Exactly.
only gets us
Yeah.
so far. Punishment
Mhm.
punishment might be the reason you started to take action, but it's always going to be the ceiling, right? And you're going to get to
Mm.
here and here and here. And until you start to learn compassion and empathy and nurture, and it does
Mm.
come from love. The intention is love, to progress, to evolve,
Mhm.
to transform. I don't want to use the word change, because I feel like change is like to move away from, versus, well, how do I
Yeah.
grow into the person that I
Mm.
say I want to be, which we all have access to.
Yeah.
Like, we all have access to. Then I think, I'm so grateful for those really hard times, because I just don't know if I would be where I am now with the
Mm.
relationship I have now, which still needs work, but it's definitely so much more fulfilling and fun and adventurous and way less limiting than what I was 18 years ago.
Mm. Thank you so much for sharing. Do you feel that when you were healing, I guess, breaking out of the habits of anorexia,
Mm.
did you have a particular practice that you kept coming back to? So, say a practice that you knew was getting you forward and out of that mentality, out of that mindset.
I wouldn't say it was so much of a practice.
Mm.
It was more, um, it was like more of a compare and contrast that I
Mhm.
would use for myself. It's like, if you go down here, where is it going to lead you?
Mhm.
If you take the road down here, I know it's unknown, but you're not going to be where you are now. And
Mm.
I think, in order for us to fully change, it starts with self-awareness
Mhm.
and knowing that, like I said, I had a list of rules that I lived by that got me down here, but I didn't want to
Mm.
be there. And so I remember saying to myself, I can't live like this. I can't live like this. I can't live like this. And so when it came to being to changing habits, as
Mm.
much as there were parts of me that wanted to keep going down that path because it was safe, I don't
Mhm.
know why I wanted to isolate myself from everyone.
Yeah.
But I was like, well, it doesn't lead me to where I want to be.
Mm.
And I remember having this moment where I was like, I have to lead by example. Otherwise, I'm just a fraud. And
Mhm.
I can lie to everyone else, but I can't lie to myself. And it was, again, that moment, I was like, you can't take people down the path you haven't been before. Stop trying to, like, it
Mhm.
was this kind of moment again where I always have like internal, like almost like out of body experiences where I'm like, hold on, what do you say? Like, do what you say you do, be who you say you
Mm.
are, lead by
Mm.
example. That was something that was super important to me. And I always talked about self-leadership, right?
Mm.
Self-leadership is doing what we say we do publicly and privately,
Mm.
because there's a saying that I often say, and it's, the story that we create, that we know about ourselves, is by far the most powerful story we'll ever know, because we
Mhm.
know the truth. And so what we are constantly doing from the moment we wake up in the morning is collecting evidence on ourselves. Are we
Mm.
trustworthy? Are we
Mhm.
are we disciplined? Are
Mhm.
we caring? Do I look after
Mm.
myself? Or am I compromising all the time? And I talk
Mm.
about flexibility and discipline they can coexist.
Mm.
But if there's just flexibility
Mm.
and there's no discipline and there's always compromising, then all we know
Mm.
about ourselves is that we compromise with ourselves versus just doing the thing that we say we're going to do. Like,
Mm.
sometimes don't give yourself an option, So it's always just a learning experience that we, like, as we
Mm.
collect data on ourselves, the question I always ask myself, well, is, what are you going to do with it? Right? What am I going to
Mm.
do with all
Love
this
that.
data? Am I going to beat myself with a stick, or am I going to
Mm.
self-correct?
Mm.
Right? Because, again, we're not collecting all this data to punish ourselves. Like, if we do,
Mm.
again, that's the ceiling. Versus collecting the data and going, okay, with all this information that I know about myself, how am I going to use it to become better, be better tomorrow?
Mm.
And when we talk about, I'll start tomorrow, we lose that opportunity to learn a little bit about ourselves today. And everyone wants to
Mm.
start,
Exactly.
on the weekend, or it's got to be like a
Mm.
new, it's like, no, just start the practice today. It doesn't have to be
Mm.
perfect. Like, you're not failing, you're just learning, right? And so
Yeah.
the language that we use is really important, because it
Mm.
it it determines what our experience is going to be and what we make it mean, and the association of things.
Mm. I love that. And it's so true that every action you take is a deposit into a self-belief account.
Mm.
And you can either have the self-belief account that you're someone who consistently doesn't show up, you're a fuck up, you can't achieve your goals. Or you have the other self-belief account you can start filling up, where it's, hey, I did that today. I didn't want to, but I did.
Mm.
And because of that, you can move forward and build up that account more, and then start to lead with literal, tangible evidence that you are who you say you are. So I
Mm.
absolutely love that. Now, in terms of understanding the self and self-love, what
Mhm.
practices do you personally do? And how often do you do them or book them in for yourself throughout your week or month? And now what I mean by book in is if it's something, for me, I schedule in my walks. I schedule in putting my phone away. So it doesn't have to be book in appointment, but book in you.
Every morning, it's like, I used to love when I used to be like, oh, I really want my partner to wake up first thing in the morning with me to do sunrise.
Mhm.
And now I'm like, no, I'm so grateful he needs 10 hours sleep, because
Mm.
when I first wake up in the morning, actually what I recognize that I needed more than anything was just some time in solitude, not on my
Mm.
phone. So when I walk in the morning, if I'm to use my phone, it is only to take a photo of the sunrise. It's not to be on there, open a app,
Mhm.
no response, like don't read a message. It's just like the first 30 minutes, especially before I get to my coffee spot, is just be there. Look at the sky. It's
Mm.
gently dark. I love being up before the sunrise, because it's like it's like the calm before the storm. Like it's so still and there's hardly anyone around. And there's something
Mm.
so calming for my nervous system about that. And so I always do my walk first thing. I'll look at the sunrise or just be. And I often will think. And then I'm not allowed to write till I get to the first coffee shop, because then it means I'm on
Mhm.
my phone.
Mhm.
And I tend to write, and I will write thoughts, feelings, questions, whatever it is. I just have to do some sort of writing. I write more for myself than I do for anything else. But if I feel it's worthy of, a post, then it goes out to a post. And I can't always articulate myself, which is very
Mm.
frustrating. But that for me is like a really big part of my self care, because from the moment I open my phone, I am at the beck and call of others, which is,
Mm.
my job is to help others, which I absolutely love doing. And I made a promise to myself that I would respond to everyone that messages me, um, unless it's like a creep or it's just
Mm.
inappropriate. But outside of
You are
that,
so good at getting back to
if I
messages.
find messages, like I'm going to respond to them,
Mm.
because I just think it's, duty of care.
Mm.
And if I can help someone, I'm just going to help them. But
Mm.
that's a lot, because I get a lot of messages. And
Yeah.
so I have to have that part of myself to myself. And then honestly, self-care to me is training and nutrition.
Mhm.
So these habits that people have like a very on-off relationship with,
Mhm.
when we think of it as a chore, it's going to feel like a chore. But I think of it as just acts of love.
Mm.
Freedom requires a different type of discipline, and I want
Mhm.
freedom in my body. And I'm
Mm.
just as human as everyone else. If I don't, stay on top of my food, I will overeat. I love eating so much. So
Mm.
it's like, okay, this is not for me, it's not an obsession, just feels like just something that I do. In the same way that I write every morning, I track my nutrition every day. I
Mm.
train. When I train, phone's on airplane mode, it's my me time, because
Mm.
I want to make the most out of that 90 minutes or whatever time I have. And I really want to enjoy that session. And I just want it to be about me, because outside of that, it's about everyone else, which again is totally fine. So I guess
Mm.
my level of self-care is my morning walk, my writing, and then just looking after my nutrition and training. Like they're for
Mm.
me super, super important. And then, actually what's funny enough, like I just a little bit of time in the mornings with my partner also feels like self-care for me.
Mhm.
Because again, that morning time is like the calm before the storm in for him. Because even though we
Mm.
spend a lot of time together, it doesn't mean it's always quality. I'm in this room, he's out there. I think there's a very important thing to like, you have to separate time next to each other versus time within each other. And I love
Mm.
that. I do enjoy like a little bit of time with him in the morning before we go and do whatever we've got to do for the rest of the day. So I still, funny enough, even though it's external to me, what my
Mm.
soul enjoys is his company.
I love that. I love that. And
Mm.
yeah, your relationship, like your love that you show, looks so pure. And I love it. I
I'm
love
not
it.
secret about it.
Yeah, yeah. I love that. And I think it's, yeah, in terms of self-care and that sometimes being with another person, we're in this day and age where so much is automated. And
Mm.
so it's like you can get ChatGPT to write your training program, your nutrition, even to give you check-ins each week. You can work from your desk at home. You can not see an entire soul for as many days as you like. You can order food to your door, all that sort of a thing. And what is thought to be convenience ironically takes you further away from yourself, even though you're
Yes.
spending more time with yourself. It's definitely my opinion on it. But I love how you share that connection is also such a vital part of your self-love, because it's something that's often forgotten.
Yeah. It's so funny. Um, One of the things I love about my morning is just the surface level interactions I have with the people around me. Like
Mm,
the regular people that I just get a hi and a wave and how's it going? Like, I actually realize I love that. And it's funny because
mm,
people are like, oh, I hate surface level. I'm like, it has its place. Like, you're not going to have a
mm,
deep conversation with everyone, but also, when you sometimes have a random deep conversation with a stranger and you walk away and you're
yeah.
like, whoa. And I think I love that. There was something so authentic about
Mm,
meeting a stranger, falling into whatever deep conversation you have, and then walking away and being like, I'm probably never going to see that person again. And you know what? That was just really intense and lovely. And so
mm,
where I walk or where I live in the morning, I have some really lovely acquaintances, and I look forward to seeing them every day,
mm,
knowing it's nothing more than that thing. And
mm,
that little bit of social engagement is really important for our systems because
yeah.
what we do here, even as we're trying to read each other's facial expressions, we're trying to see
Mm,
each other's eyes, our nervous system still can't fully pick up
mhm,
the small micro mannerisms that you and I are
mm,
doing. And so when we see it in
mhm,
person, that's why we feel things so much more. We're so more hypersensitive to these
mm,
gestures because now we've actually got them in person. And there's nothing can ever fill the cup of what
mm,
true social, in person, skin to skin, hug to hug, facial, face to face, smile to smile, eye to eye can do than what actually being there in that moment does. So
mm,
we can use FaceTime, that might be the closest thing, but it's so important that we have regular social interactions with other people that are important to us and
mhm,
even strangers because they even see in like our brain how it lights
mm,
up even with saying hi to someone and someone smiling. When you
yeah.
walk past someone in the street and like be like
Mm.
hey and they don't, they're like
Oh, and they don't say
you'd
anything?
be like, oh,
Oh.
really like, and then someone else they're like hi and you're like hi, like you just go,
Yeah.
it's like
Mm,
I tune into all of those things
mm,
and I'm like, wow, we need this and all this like all this stuff that makes things more convenient. It just takes us away from social engagement more and more and more.
mm,
And that feeling of disconnect in a world where we can connect so much is such an interesting thing because we can still feel lonely in a crowded room.
mm, mhm. Yeah. And it's even sort of in terms of a lot of the times, especially online work, we can spend so much time in meetings all day that you
Mm,
get to the end of the day, you're like, I'm too exhausted. I don't want to see people. And it's
mm,
like seeing even just one person who you can have a laugh with, go for a half an hour walk with, that
mm,
sort of a thing. It can light up your entire day, make you forget
mm,
about all the meetings and just take you into such a beautiful space that you can't access
mm,
over technology, over the internet, right?
mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, beautiful. Cool. I love this. So scheduling self-care for your week or self-love is the morning routine and the morning walks, that solitude, that time to really connect with you. And
Mm,
that time you mentioned, and I want to highlight this, no phone until the first coffee shop, where it just gives you that moment to really take in and be present. So I
mm,
absolutely love that as well. Now, in terms of training, I want to touch on this a little bit more with purposeful training. When it comes to getting in the gym, what's the mindset that you enter with going into the gym? And how do you get yourself into that frame of mind before you start your sessions? Because you've been training for a long time and you have an athlete's mindset through and through. So
mm.
I would love for you to break it down for us.
Yeah, I'm a massive believer that your preparation for the gym starts from the moment you are getting ready to go to the gym.
Mm-hmm.
So I have I don't call people on the way to the gym. I don't take work calls. I really try and minimize like a lot of external stimuli coming in
Mm-hmm.
because to tune into the work ahead, like to really get in there requires us actually a little bit of stillness. You might
Mm.
use stillness. Like sometimes I drive the car and I don't listen to anything. Some other
Mhm.
times I listen to certain music that I know that I'm going to be playing. So there's like a bit of an arousal in the nervous system that's kind of like
Mhm.
getting me ready for the work ahead. So I know when I used to train at base gym with Bass, I would put his playlist on the way to the gym, and I would
Mhm.
feel like the
You can
emotion
feel it
come up.
coming in.
But it kind of primed me, and I would use visualization. So yeah, yesterday I had
Mm.
deadlifts, and I'm like, oh, they're still, yeah, I'm still like navigating my way around making them feel good since my injury.
Mm.
And I realized, like, I noticed like how much I just I didn't want to have music. I didn't want to have too much stimuli. I didn't want to be on my phone. I just looked at the program and I'm like, okay, how do I need to set myself up so that everything feels good? All right, my stretching. And I tuned into
Mm.
each stretch. Does it feel good? Do I need a little bit more time? Should I do a second round? How does this feel? And so this meditation in motion, this being
Mm.
present in this moment, I think is such a beautiful and powerful practice, because if we think about how we are for the rest of the day, we're so distracted.
Mhm.
And as you get stronger, as your programs get more complex, when I say complex, it's just like, moving from an RDL to
Mm.
a barbell deadlift, or,
Mm.
body weight to dumbbell to barbell, whatever it is. We need a greater level of intention into why we do what we do.
Mm.
If you want to get stronger, you bet you have to be present, right? Because we
Yeah.
have to earn the right to put weight on the bar, right? Which means if it
Mhm.
doesn't feel good, why doesn't it feel good? Are we still checked out, or are we giving this
Mm.
time our time? And if we think about it, for all of us, like, we're all going into the gym for ourselves. It's probably really the only selfish, without it being selfish, thing that we do in the day.
Mm.
So doesn't it deserve respect?
Mhm.
Like, if this is the only 90 minutes that you're truly doing something for yourself, wouldn't it make sense that you do what you can to set yourself up for success?
Mm.
So I try and minimize, like, leave work. I don't want to look into I put my phone on airplane mode,
Mm.
and I just bring up my training program, and that's the kind of thing I stare at for a while. And if I
Yeah.
need to revise any, exercises like of what I did before, I'll go in and look at that. But it really is just asking myself what I want to get out of the session, using
Mm.
visualization techniques, especially for the lifts that are going to be hard,
Mm.
noticing any anxiety that might show up for the work ahead, which, if we're in that zone, like, training at some point should get to the point where you're like, I'm actually really nervous,
Yeah.
because this
Yeah.
is, for every level there's another devil, right? Like, that's,
Mm.
we've earned the right to be there. You've earned the
Mm.
right to be using weights that are going to demand so much more from you. That's how we grow, right? That's how we get stronger.
Yeah.
That's how we grow, and that's all what we're searching for. So to lean into it, to be aware of it, to become familiar with it, I think allows us to take that as an opportunity and go, well, how do I set myself up better so that I can be successful in this moment? Knowing that maybe sometimes it doesn't feel
Mm.
that great. Like, my deadlifts felt awful yesterday and I was so pissed. And I was like,
Mm.
just the way it is,
Yeah.
So I hope that answers the question um, in a way that is kind of digestible. I do
Mm.
believe that intention is a big thing. Visualization is a big thing. And blocking out the noise as you set yourself up for your training session is going to give you such a better outcome than trying to do 10 things at once. Leave work at
Mm.
home or leave work at work. It's going to be there when you get back. Put on some music, shift your experience of yourself, get yourself ready, prime the nervous system, tune in as you warm up, and then take one rep at a time.
I absolutely love that. The intentionality and presence behind entering the gym and then having a great session because of that. And even those great sessions where you might not get a PB, you
Mm.
might you might suck in all of your working sets,
Mm.
but the great session is the fact that you were there and you had the opportunity to learn, right?
Mm. Consistency, consistency, consistency.
Mm.
Right. And I saw one of your most recent posts. It's like, the session that that you were going to skip today is a session that helped build your body in 3 months' time. Right. It's that
Mm.
accumulation of the work that we do. And
Yeah.
actually, the days that feel shit, they have their role. Actually, they help us
Exactly.
build resilience. They help us
Mhm.
become more resourceful. They
Mhm.
they actually force us to tune in a little bit, a little bit more, and go, oh, what am I neglecting? Did I not set myself up? Today's just one of those days.
Mm.
And then when you have a good session, oh, how good do the good sessions feel? So you have to take the good
Mm.
with the bad, because
Yeah.
consistency is adaptability. right?
Mm,
Consistency is how do we learn through whatever circumstance that we're going through. And so,
mhm,
sure, there are times where we need to rest, but most of the time that we just don't feel like going, generally it's just a
mm.
thought versus my body saying it's rest day.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you, in terms of navigating those thoughts, in periods of, I guess, what you might experience as low motivation? So, and I guess I want to not use bodybuilding where you're quite fatigued at the end of your prep as an example,
Yep.
but general for you personally having work stress, family stress, relationship stress, that sort of a thing, those days where everything feels quite overwhelming and you know you've got to get into the gym. What's that sort of practice that you or thought process that you go through to get there and be like, I'm going to give my best shot today?
That's a really good question. And it's funny, I've spent most of this year not motivated.
Mm,
And the practice is consistency. The practice is to show up, especially on the days that I don't feel like it, because whether I feel like it or not, it's a level of self care.
mm,
And this year, for the first time in my entire year of my entire career, was
mm,
that business came first for a while. And
mm,
I realized that I was compromising on when I would show up to the gym because I prioritized business. That wasn't to exclude how often I came to the gym. I made it to the 4 sessions, but it definitely wasn't optimal.
mm,
And I noticed how off I felt about myself. But it was just a period of time because, in the same way that I talk about periodizing effort,
mm,
sometimes we have to periodize our priorities. And I like using that as a method because it doesn't mean that everything has to drop. I still
mm,
made it to the gym 4 days a week. It wasn't optimal, but I still made it. And so
mm,
the priority for a period of time was work.
mhm,
And that didn't mean that I neglected my nutrition either. I was a little bit more
mm,
flexible than usual, but I still tracked. I still had
mhm,
boundaries that I honored. Did I feel the best? No, I didn't. I didn't because
mhm.
I knew that I was compromising with certain things without
Yeah.
letting it all go. And I think the practice is, can we still juggle, right? With everything that goes
Mm,
on in our life. Do we have to drop the ball? Or if we drop it once, that's okay. Like pick it up and see what we can do better. And this is why I love
mm,
systems or using things like Google Calendars. Like I know that there's so many women and men listening to this, and they're like either single moms working 2 jobs.
mm,
Like, there's so many balls to juggle,
mm,
and it's like so hard to catch them at times. So we just start with one, and then we add another.
mm,
And using a diary or prompts or anything where you can set yourself or your environment up for better success, I highly
mm,
recommend because, as I named, what might have been a priority now might need to go second for something
mm.
else in return, but you don't have to let it go. Because it's when we let things go, like our nutrition, most people let nutrition down first, that
Yep.
has the highest emotional tax. So don't let that
Mm,
go,
mm,
but let it have a little bit of flexibility without
yeah.
overstepping boundaries. And
Mm,
it's not perfect, but sometimes good enough is good enough. And then other
mm,
times when we can, we try and be optimal. So now,
mm,
look, I realized I was like, I feel like shit. I was like, I don't feel good. So let's look at what I'm doing. So I went in my
mm,
nutrition. I was like, okay, the flexibility, let's go into optimal now. All right, business,
mm,
where can I compartmentalize? What's a priority now? Training is.
mm,
And so I was able to kind of rejig the priorities. Business hasn't fallen down.
mm,
It's just probably in a better system, with a better system. In the same way that
yeah.
my training, sometimes I don't have the luxury to train at a certain gym that I want to train. So it's like, okay, what's the compromise?
Mm,
I get to go to the gym, but it's not at the same place. But you know what? That's good enough. And when I can do
mm,
optimal, I'll do optimal. And so I think once we know everything that we need to do, having that out as a plan and then going, well, where this week can it fit? Being organized is such
mm,
an underrated skill. Pre-planning,
mhm,
so highly underrated when it comes to achieving any goal. Knowing that
mm,
things aren't going to be perfect, because perfect robs the idea of consistency, but
yeah.
having that consistency and adaptability is going to help you achieve whatever the goal is that you're going to achieve far quicker, far better than only training
Mm,
or traveling on the perfect days, right? When we
mm,
compromise too much, that evidence, we lose confidence in ourselves and then everything becomes too hard. And then we never do
mm,
what we want to do, knowing that we actually have the ability to do it if we look at it from a different perspective.
I love that. And there was one thing that you touched on a couple minutes ago in terms of waiting till the weekend to organize things and waiting till next week to be perfect, that sort of a thing. And it's something that it's so true with what you're saying in terms of organizing ahead. It's like there are going to be slip ups and there are also going to be those unexpected times where it's like you've done your best to organize, but something still came up where you had to rejig something priorities wise. You know, your kid was sick, you had to pick them up from school the time you would usually train. That's 1 out of 7 days. And it's like if you've got everything else organized there in your calendar, you can see where there's space where you can get that next session in. So it's that organization. Yeah, so true. Wow, absolutely loving this conversation. In terms of organization and then coming into nutrition, and I do want to touch on because I feel like you have a really beautiful perspective and point of view on this, where it's very easy to be completely on one camp where it's like you shouldn't track at all, that sort of a thing, like, you know, just love yourself the way you are, that sort of a thing. And then you've got, you should be super rigid, you shouldn't ever eat any bad food. You got to be the best. There's nuance to what we give as advice as coaches, and there's nuance to what's appropriate for someone's journey. But I would love to know, in terms of your perspective when it comes to intentional nutrition, you come from a very strict all or nothing sort of background with a previous eating disorder, coming to now being able to utilize nutrition as a tool to progress you towards your goals. How did you begin to create this mindset?
I guess it came back to, I don't want to live like this anymore.
Mm.
And recognizing that I didn't enjoy the on-off.
Mm.
And I remember thinking, there's just got to be another way. There's got to be a better way. And, you know, as you ask me those questions, Zoe, context is a really big piece when it comes to giving out information that I think the internet misses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And everything that we do, especially around our habits around nutrition, they're just tools. So in order for someone to have flexibility in their nutrition, they have to have a level of nutritional literacy. So to give someone, go track your macros and have some flexibility, they have zero information about nutrition. It's kind of like throwing them in the deep end. And some people learn from the deep end, but others don't. And so I find with more information, more education, I make better choices. Some people find more education, more information too overwhelming. You know, we do have the internet, which has a wonderful color of, you know, this and that, right and wrong, do, don't, and everything. And I always ask myself, like, how do I want to live? I love food. I love being social. I also love to look and feel a certain way. So therefore, I'm going to take this information and I'm going to make my own nutrition philosophy. And that's why I like to talk about I say nutrition philosophy over a diet. And that's because most people associate the word diet with a deficit, versus a diet is just your way of eating. Your nutrition philosophy is just your way of eating. So we have parts of us that say we've got to be healthy, and we have parts of us that say, fuck it, YOLO, I want to go drink beers with the girls and eat whatever. It's like, hold on, how can we have both? Actually, why do we have to be in restriction of one or the other?
Yes.
Why can't we actually take a little bit of everything and find, if we can, some sort of balance? Because the truth is, balance changes over our lifetime. You bet in 10 years' time, as I hit perimenopause, my idea of balance is probably going to be different to what it is now. I'm probably going to be a little bit more rigid. But right now, that's not where I am at. You know, and I was all or nothing, and I realized it didn't get me where I wanted. And then I became too flexible, and that didn't get me where I wanted. And then I met in the middle, because I took all the information about myself and all the information from learning, you know, skills, courses, reading. And I'm like, what makes me feel the best? How do I do this the best I can? And I enjoy tracking. I don't find tracking restrictive. I just love data. But I also go through periods when I don't track, like when I travel, and I'm like, I kind of know how I'm going to stay weight stable. I've got high levels of nutritional literacy. For someone who wants to intuitively eat, if you've never tracked your nutrition before, even being on a meal plan or have had any practice in losing weight,
Mm.
your entry to intuitively eating is so low. You don't have what it takes to intuitively eat just yet. And so
Mm.
if someone's listening here and they're like, I've never tracked my food in my life, it feels restrictive and overwhelming. Rather than think about tracking your nutrition, just start creating a diet diary. Just literally start writing down what you eat in a day.
Mm. Mhm.
Because most people either have they're delusional about what they eat. They don't think they eat
Mm.
enough. And actually, we did a post the other day on this. It's like people that say they don't
Mm.
eat much versus people that say they eat a lot.
Mm.
2,000 calories and 2,000 calories can look very different. And
Mhm.
most people that don't eat much are just eating really high, dense calorie foods, but not actually that
Yeah.
much in the day. So
Mm.
they have no understanding. They don't have
Mm.
any nutritional literacy. So in order
Mm.
to earn the right to intuitively eat, which I say that in the same way that I say you got to earn the right weight or earn the right to put weight on the bar. It's a skill.
Mm. Mhm.
Learn how to track your nutrition. Learn about nutrition first. Learn
Mhm.
balance. Learn how to eat whole food and soul food. Learn moderation, whatever moderation
Mm.
is to you. Then, once you've developed that skill and you know when to stop when you're full, or how a
Mm.
whole day's worth of meals feels like, then
Mm.
you can practice intuitively eating. Because without those skills, you're not going to get the outcome that you want.
Yeah.
And just in the way that a meal plan is just a tool. We can't live on a meal plan, but at least a
Mm.
meal plan teaches someone structure. And then
Mm.
once they're like, you know what, I'm bored of eating this food, but I know in what way, like I need to have X amount of veggies, X amount of fruit, 4 meals of protein a day. I'm gonna, my meal plan had, these carbs around my training window. You can take that structure and now you can do what the
Mm.
next thing might feel like for you. And then you track
Mhm.
your progress and you see if you're doing a good job. Everything we do is just a tool, but there
Mm.
are ways in which they should layer and can lay each other to ultimately get that outcome of intuitively eating, if that is the
Mm.
end goal.
Yeah, I love that. In terms of intuitively eating as well, and that being people's goal, what do you, or I guess, what sort of advice would you give in terms of someone who comes to you, they're overwhelmed with the tracking because they really have, it's their first time downloading MyFitnessPal.
Mm.
Yeah, what would you say to them?
The thing that I just remembered that I didn't say before was intention is everything. So
Mm-hmm.
I think, again, what drives a behavior, but whether it feels obsessive or healthy or fun
Mm.
or enjoyable or overwhelming or not, is the intention behind it. And look, I'll
Mm.
be honest, when I first started tracking my macros, I was overwhelmed. I was like, oh my God,
Mm.
this thing. And I had, some education around nutrition. Learning
Mm.
something new is always really scary, but
Mm.
learning how you progress is also very enjoyable. And my advice to that is
Mm.
like start with a meal plan and just start by adding the meal plan into MyFitnessPal, just in that first level of
Mm.
habit. And that, because you've got a guide, now we're just going to find the entries
Mm.
and we're going to add them in.
Mm.
Or if you don't have access to a meal plan,
Mm-hmm.
write down your protein, fats, carbohydrates, all the different kind of food groups that you would like to eat. And you're going to
Mm.
start with just the food that you want to eat. To know numbers, to just practicing, weighing your food and adding it in without it being right
Mm.
or wrong. This is just a practice.
Yeah.
And then from there, you can start to, shift and change and move around with things. So I often get
Mm.
clients who have never tracked before. I say, all right, just the foods that you've been eating. All I want you to do this week is you're going to weigh it. Don't change anything about it. Just weigh it. Add it into MyFitnessPal. The
Mm.
entries with the most data point in it or a green tick is what you're going to use, or we're going to use anything with nut tab on it.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want you to practice that for 2 weeks. Don't change anything.
Mm.
Right. And I check in every day. How are we doing? Can I have a look? Perfect. This looks really good. And so they're getting like constant feedback of like feedback loop. Yep, this is good. Doing
Yeah.
really well. Blah, blah, blah. And so again, it's like people get kind of taken aback when it's like, is this right or is this wrong?
Mm.
because they want to get it right so bad. And again, it's like, where is that person at in terms of like what they know, but also what
Mm.
is the intention behind they do? Because again, going back to your previous question, when
Mm.
people people can become obsessed with tracking,
Mhm.
and we know they're obsessed when they can't do anything without it. It's like they can't live
Yeah.
without it. They don't know
Mm.
how to make decisions outside of that thing. It's like that's when you haven't actually learnt from the tool. You've become reliant on the tool, and they're two different things.
Mm.
So the goal of MyFitnessPal is to teach you about food and
Mhm.
no more than that, really, or use
Mm.
it as some sort of boundary. But if you can't eat outside or you can't be social without that thing, that's the problem. And that's where you have to
Mm.
look at what are some of the practices that you can do with that person that is going to help
Mm.
them understand that this is not the be all and end all. This is a tool that we can
Mm.
learn from. And right now, you're not learning from it. You're becoming restricted by it. So this thing that was meant to give you
Mm.
freedom is no longer freedom. It's the restriction. And again, that's something that you have to like work with someone on an individual with.
Mm.
Um, but humans do this thing where we take everything too far.
Yeah.
And so it
Well,
really is a practice.
mm. I absolutely love that. And I love you touched on quite a few times the freedom and the discipline, freedom, discipline. And it's like to have a level of freedom where you may want to change your physique. You may want to build more muscle, lose body fat. You might be training for performance. You want to make sure you're optimizing your training session. So you're training to the best of your ability. That might require using a tool for a period of time so you can gain that nutritional literacy. So thank you. That was very well worded. And I want to also highlight in terms of using MyFitnessPal, it's definitely something for those who might feel overwhelmed by using it or overwhelmed by the numbers, the quantities, all that sort of a thing, finding the right entries. I like to liken it as a curiosity tool for these moments. It's like, okay, you have your meal plan. Like we use success menus, which is it's like a meal plan we create together at I'm Strength. And with that, you've got that. It's like if you're not comfortable tracking or not, like MyFitnessPal just makes you feel gross. It's like, cool. If you want to get to learn a little bit more about your nutrition, it's such an easy way. Because if you Google how many calories are in this, it's so much more than calories. MyFitnessPal gives you that little bit of sort of the nutrients behind it as well.
Mm.
And that's, so I absolutely love in terms of the way that you word that was just beautiful. What to finish off, what are you currently in terms of training, in terms of eating at the moment, what are you currently working towards during this season of your life right now?
Honestly, right now, I really
Mhm.
want to optimize my health. I'm
Mhm.
35 and
Mhm.
I've only, like this year, I've had a blood test every month
Mhm.
and since December last year. And I decided to, rather than just have it as like a data point, I'm like, I actually want to do something with it. And I
Mm.
was actually curious, like, am I actually like in an optimal space, with all
Mm.
my hormones, um my thyroid, absolutely everything. And
Mm.
because the truth is like even in my builds, I'm still very relatively lean. And while it's very
Mm.
easy to stay there, and I
Mm.
can eat 3,000 calories and still be at 14%, like every deck's out, like it's just I'm like
Mm.
it's just
Yeah.
wild. I'm like, does that have a cost on things like my thyroid, and
Yeah.
just in metabolism and everything? And so now that I'm back training, I always
Mm.
training for strength.
Mhm.
I still feel like I I I want to make improvements for my body. I want bigger
Mhm.
glutes. Um,
Yeah.
I just want my body to feel good, right? So
Mm.
there's sound like your client. I want to lose weight. No, I don't want to lose weight. I want to build, I just actually want to build my body. I want to build
Mhm.
strength. I want to be optimal with
Mm.
my nutrition. Like I really want to
Mm.
support myself in this part of my life because
Mm.
I'm doing whatever I can now to be
Mm.
successful or hopefully have as little challenges as I
Mm.
enter the next season of my life. So I'm really in
Mm.
this moment of like, how do I look after myself? How do I still
Mm.
get the most out of myself? I still feel like I'm scratching at the surface with my physique, but I have to work harder and smarter for the
Mhm.
smallest gains.
Yeah.
So patience is definitely something
Mm,
that is practiced. Um,
mm,
but I'm also really happy to be here in a
mm,
way, which is interesting. I think, as we get older, we get wiser. And that's because
mhm,
we just embody so much more knowledge about
mm.
ourselves and about, what we're capable of. And, I often, reflect back on what I've done in the past. And sometimes I'm like, oh, I used to be. And it's like, okay, what do I want to do with that information? Like, can I use it to say, well, look what you're capable of? Or do I want to use it and be like, oh, maybe I'll never get there? But, it's a dance that I have with myself, but I'm definitely looking for optimal at the moment, which means I have way more rest than I usually do. I'm more
Mhm.
conscious of how my body's feeling after the sessions. I named
Yeah.
you before. I'm doing a lot of deadlifting variations, and I'm noticing as I get
Yeah.
stronger that bell curves. I'm kind of
Mhm,
looking at the top here. I'm going to fall off pretty soon. So
mhm,
in the past, I would have just been like go go go, and now I'm like no, I think I'm
mm.
ready to deload. And in
Yeah.
a way, I feel like I'm just a little bit more conscious, which I really
Mm,
like,
mm,
versus just being a bull at the gate and thinking, no, 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 I don't have time.
mm. Yeah, I love that. That's and so important as well in terms of entering each season of your life and being in current seasons. It's like you have the opportunity now to build a foundation, but you
Mm,
also have all of these data points that you can reflect on and be like, well, this is what's created this so far. It's
mm,
like, how can I make this even better for
mm.
the rest of my journey? So I absolutely love that. Thank you so much for sharing.
I want to be able to train for as long as I can. I'm gonna be that old lady in the
Mm,
gym being like, I used to
yeah.
do that.
Yeah.
Um,
Just be like, have a look at my photos.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
right.
yeah. Back in the day, look at
Mm.
me bodybuilding, and they all come to me like, I used to bodybuild.
Mm, I love that.
Yeah, so
Yeah. Thank you so much for jumping on today. It has been such a beautiful conversation, and I'm sure so many people are going to listen to this and just feel so inspired to align action moving forward, being more intentional with their life, training, nutrition, mindset, being intentional with it all. So thank you so much for sharing.
thank you. I really enjoyed it.
Don't forget, you can find Hattie and Coben's online coaching Flex Method at flexmethod.com.au. You can find Hattie Boydle on Instagram at Hattie Boydle. And then you can also find her amazing podcast that has given me so much inspiration, so many insights, and is just so easily digestible at the Hattie Boydle podcast on both Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Catch you guys in the next episode.